Right.
I'm very fortunate to have Mark Anthony Kay back to talk about the Dark Monarchy's new album, which comes out on July 1st, which is called Weight of the World. Mark, how are you doing?
Very good, Preston. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. Beautiful weather down here in Atlanta, Georgia. How's it up there and outside Toronto?
Oh, it's surprisingly very, very good. I mean, it's like in the mid 20s. We were supposed to have a thunderstorm, but that seems to have passed already at this point. So it's fantastic. I'm enjoying the weather here and enjoying life in general.
Oh, great. I've been listening to Weight of the World for a while, and I know the first single is also out, which is Solitaire. Um, First of all, congratulations. Another great album that you and Joe Bailey did together. This is the fourth full Dark Monarchy album, if I'm correct. So I know you did, was three EPs as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, usually with each album, we would do an accompanying EP of a couple of songs because we usually will write about eight, nine songs. And usually to keep it at our 40, 45-minute length, we usually have leftover songs.
Right, right. And these are hard hitting from beginning to end. Like I mentioned, the first single, Solitaire, is already out. Let's start there and let's start with how this album came about. Because I know you have a lot of projects going on, not only with the Dark Monarchy, but of course, Project Gemini, which you've talked about before. How did this album start?
Usually, funny enough, me and Joe have to sometimes plan ahead a schedule of what we're going to do because Joe himself is pretty busy as well. He releases a lot of records. I believe he's on album nine, his own, if I'm not mistaken. So he does a lot of stuff. And he was also doing another side project with a friend of his as well. So we decided before, like in 2023, that on January 1st of this year, we were going to start writing for the new Dark Monarchy record. So once we started writing it, everything started falling into place rather quickly. I was just finishing up the mixing and mastering of the Project Gemini album, What's on Your Mind, at that point. So it was perfect timing because once that was done, I had a lot of time to work on this new record with them, and it went very, very smoothly.
Mhm. So the last album you did, last full album you did was 2022. Was that Scary? Could you?
Kioscaro.
Thank you.
Yes.
How does this differ from that?
Um, well, I think on this side of it, there's maybe a little bit more guitar on this album than in Kioscaro. There's a lot of keyboards, a lot of sequencing stuff on the last record.
Mhm.
Also, I think there's a little bit more of a divide with the vocals. Joe was very much the vocalist proper on the last record, but in this one, we share the vocals a lot more. In fact, there's two songs where I fully sing by myself on this record, which is sort of odd. I ran it by Joe when we were doing it. I said, "Are you sure you want me to do it this way?" He goes, "No, no, honestly, dude, because I'm loving it. Just don't worry." He's very supportive that way, and that he was, telling me that I was doing some great stuff, and he wanted me to have it that way because he thought it would maybe ruin the vibe if he added some different things to it. So
Hmm.
it turned out really good, and especially with the songs that we did together, I always think are the ones that I like the best because uh, vocally we have sort of different styles, but they complement each other. And I think it definitely showed in a couple of the songs that we did, like On Trial with the World. It was one of those songs where we split the vocals up, and it really ended up working for the better that way, I believe.
Yeah, I think the vocals are extremely strong. And one of the things I noted was that there were some songs where you do those tandem or duet vocals. But
Yeah,
let's start with the first single, which is Solitaire, which is out. And I think Joe sings most of that. But
yeah.
one of the things, Mark, that jumped out at me was the weight of the guitars
Mm.
and your guitar approach. Could you talk about the song a little bit?
Sure. The guitars on this one, I think, are very strong. Joe had a great idea with the beginning of the song, to had add the vocals right at the top. Because I initially wrote that introductory piece, and I thought at first maybe it would just be an introduction with a guitar solo. But he had the idea to come in right away with the vocals, which I thought was a great idea. The difference with this album in the guitar tones compared to the last one is I've picked up a little neat device, and I'm sure all you guitar geeks out there that are listening will be well aware of this. Is there's a universal audio pedal called the Lion 68, what that is, it's a recreation of the Marshall 1968 Plexi amp, and it comes in this pedal form now, and it has this sort of impulse response speakers in there as well. So it sounds, if you close your eyes and you didn't know any better, it sounds like you're plugged into a 1968 Marshall amp. Technology, Preston, right now is so fantastic for guitar players, it's unbelievable. So I use this pedal for the guitars, for the distorted guitars, for the clean guitars, and they even have a setting on it where you can use the 68 bassman setting,
Mm-hmm.
so you can actually even do bass guitar with old Marshalls, and it sounds fantastic, unbelievable, the sound. So the sound and the weight of the guitars, as you put it, have drastically improved because of that, because now it has a more authentic Marshall sound than before, I thought, right? So I definitely think it shows in the guitar soloing, the rhythm guitars, the clean guitars, all around on the guitar. I think it's very much an improvement overall.
So how do you come up with your plan for the guitars? I know we're spending a lot of time on guitars here, but one thing I noticed about that song is it has such a great chorus feel to it. It's such a stack of different guitar sounds, but it
Yes.
all works together.
Yeah. One thing that I've tried to learn over the years is how to make complementary guitar sounds for different things. Because one thing, obviously, as you mentioned, is that in different sections of the songs, there's different layerings of the guitar. So you don't want to have, for example, a multiple layered guitar in every part of the song, because there's no difference within the song, right? So in the verse, there might be only two guitars, a left and right guitar, semi distorted, let's just say. In the pre-chorus, you maybe add another guitar, like a clean guitar underneath it. There's another layer. All of a sudden, you have a different sound. Now you get to the chorus and you add some more larger guitars, and all of a sudden, you have this grandiose thing in the chorus going on. So I very much try to do that. That's a thing that Robert John Lang, famous producer, is
Mhm.
very much known for doing: layering, stacking, taking things away in certain parts, because then your ears always perk. Oh, what happened there? I just heard something. Oh, what happened here? Something happened there, right?
Right,
So,
right,
and it's
right.
very important to do that, because you want to keep the listeners interested. And I feel that in this day and age, and even, people say, oh, the kids nowadays, they have no attention span. Well, maybe they don't, but even back then, people were critical of that too. People wanted to hear differences. It's not like this has just suddenly happened. Back in the day, we wanted to be inspired, and we wanted to hear different things in music as well. So I think it's important to do that in music today, just like it was back in the old day.
Yeah, I think, and there are 5 songs on the album, right?
Yes.
And I think that they all draw you in. But what I really like about Weight of the World is that it requires repeated listening, because there's so many different pieces in each song. Like we talked about the guitars, the drum sounds that you have, Joe's bass. I think he handles all the bass in this album.
Yes.
The orchestration, the keyboards. There's so much here, and it's so well integrated with you two as producer and you two as an engineer, that you have to listen to it again, because there are things you miss and you want to pick up. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean, if
Absolutely.
I go ahead, Mark,
No, sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
if I could ask a little bit about the writing process for the songs. When did you start the process? I know that you, in your project Gemini work as well as Dark Monarchy, have sometimes additional materials, but you want to make sure that it's a cohesive album, so you don't want to put too much on the album.
Yes, exactly. So, well, when we started this, like I said, it was the beginning of the year. I started working on it separately. And what's really important for me is I want to make sure that I had the Project Gemini stuff wrapped up, because I didn't want to have that music in my head while I was working on this one, because maybe it's two different animals
Right.
totally, right? Because Dark Monarchy is very much more orchestrated, very much more symphonic. Joe does a lot of brilliant orchestrated parts. I mean, sometimes the stuff he sends me, I just listening to it by itself, I was like, this orchestration part is so interesting. I mean, I could listen to that by itself. And you bring up an excellent point, Preston, because even for me, as a person who has been writing music, there have been so many times where I went back and listened to the songs, and I thought to myself, oh, I totally forgot about that part. I totally forgot we did this here, because there's so much in there that sometimes you forget and lose track of where what is. And you're like, I thought that was on the second song. No, it's not. It's in this song. You know what I mean? Because there's so much of it is in there, and even when you have to mix it for myself here, I mean, you have to keep that in mind. What am I going to feature? What am I going to put in the background? What needs to be brought up more? What needs a little bit of effect? It's a bit of a puzzle sometimes, but I really enjoy doing it. Mixing is one of the things I really enjoy doing with the music. Mine, Dark Monarchy.
Mhm.
Even I've been doing now, some other artists have been asking me to mix some stuff, so I've been doing other band stuff. I just love doing that because it's always a treat for the brain. What am I going to make stand out here? How am I going to make it stand out? And that was a big thing with this record.
Has your approach in terms of writing with Joe changed since the Dark Monarchy album, the first album?
Actually, that's a great question, because the way we started writing these songs has not changed, and the formula has been something that always, whenever I talk about it, people find fascinating, is that we all decide on we're going to write, let's say, 4 songs each to start, okay? And I'll write a song. I'll write the first 3 minutes of the song, and I'll stop. And usually at that point, I'll have the introduction, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and maybe another extra part, and I'll send it to Joe, and he'll complete the song. But however he wants to complete it, he'll add a guitar solo section. Maybe he'll bring back a pre-chorus in the section. Maybe he'll add back the choruses at the end. But he'll construct the ending of the song. And he does the same thing with me. He does the first 3 minutes of his song, and he brings it over to me, and I conclude it, which is probably why every one of our songs are usually about 7 minutes long, because we usually have about 3.5 minutes of parts each, so it always ends up being like 7 minutes long because we want to add all our parts into it to make it happen. So that formula has never ever changed, and we really like doing it that way because it gives it that left or right turn that nobody's expecting.
I think it's amazing that you can do it that way, especially as I mentioned, you're outside Toronto. Joe's outside of London, I believe.
Yes.
So you don't sit in the same room.
No.
You usually don't talk before you start the writing process, do you? Well,
We once in a while we have a Skype chat here and there about, just, we like to keep in touch with each other because we're not just musicians like collaborating. We're actually good friends now as well, right? So
mhm.
we always catch up with each other for usually the first 20 minutes. We're like talking about, family stuff or personal stuff. What's going on? Oh, I was renovating the house last weekend or something like that. Whatever we will talk about, and then we'll get to the music, and then we start talking about that. And usually we don't usually talk too much about uh, ideas and parts, because that's one thing that I really love about this, is that I don't step on Joe's toes and he doesn't step on mine. I don't tell him what to do on bass or keyboards or anything like that. He doesn't tell me what to do on guitars or singing. So it ends up being an authentic representation of both people in the music.
Right. Well, I know following you on YouTube that you're kind of an equipment geek. You're not quite Dave Kersner yet, but you're getting there.
No.
But you have some really good stuff. Did you change your approach with regard to the drums? I know both you and Joe worked on the drums.
Actually, great question, Preston. I can always rely on you for these great questions. The drums is definitely something that we approached a bit differently this time. I like using the Easy Drummer. It sounds really good, and like I tell people before, it's not like it's not a drum machine thing. It's not like do 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 do. It's not so robotic. What it is actually samples of real drummers, like fantastic drummers, like world-renowned drummers, drumming on these songs. They do these patterns and they have them recorded beautifully in professional big studios, and they're loops of them. But you have to construct the songs out of these things. So what they'll do is they'll give you these little packs. Like I just bought now one called the Modern Metal Pack, and what they did there is they'd have like a whole section of verse parts. So he might play a verse section on hi-hat. Then the next time he'll do it a little bit open hi-hat, then a really open hi-hat. And then he'll do something on a ride cymbal. And you have like 17 different variations of a verse part, then 17 of a pre-chorus, of a bridge part. So, but you have to construct this and to make a song out of it, right? So, but this drum pack that I got was so fantastic sounding. The drums were really nice and open. They had some fantastic Ludwig Black Beauty snare drums that they had in this pack, which was like, I love that snare drum sound. So, and because the way they recorded it, for the first time ever, usually when I do drums, I usually have like 15 tracks for drums. It's ridiculous how much drums I can put into a drum thing. But now, the way that I did it this time, which is different, is I took a kick snare, a stereo, pair of toms. So instead of having every single snare or every single tom on a separate track, I have them on two. And then I have overheads and I have ambience all in stereo pairs now, which is a lot less. But that's just something that Bob Ezrin likes to do. He likes to make it smaller so that you commit to something. That's the problem with having too much options, and you're always like, does that sound good? Should I go do it again? This way, you're kind of forced to commit to something, and you work with that sound. And I think it helped immensely because I really love the way the drums sound on this record. They're nice and full. You can hear them all. There's no cymbals lost anywhere. I really enjoy it how it turned out.
Yeah, it's really dynamic. The bass drum sound is fantastic, and the patterns are fantastic. And also, like I mentioned, it's dynamic in terms of its speeding up, slowing down, like rock should, in the right
Yeah.
places. It's just perfect. If I could go back to talk a little bit about the song construction a little bit, so I kind of skipped
Mhm.
over this. We talked about Solitaire being out now, the first single. How do you and Joe, you mentioned how you would trade off with Joe with regard to writing of the songs? Does that include lyrical phrases, passages, verses? Do you do that?
Actually, the verses, I mean, the vocals and the lyrics are something that are left to each person that's going to be doing the singing. Like, for example, in Solitaire, we knew Joe was going to do it.
Mhm.
So he is in charge of all the lyrics, all the vocals. And the only time that something changes with that is if Joe messages me and says, "Hey, Mark, I got an idea for a bridge part, but I want you to sing it. Here's a ghost track of how I kind of think of how it should sound." But he'll leave it very minimal, and he'll say, "I'll just give you this verse line here or this vocal line. If you want to do it this way, great. If not, do it your way. But what I really would want is you to maybe find some harmonized vocals with these parts." So that's the only thing he'll ever kind of recommend. And other than that, it's up to the person who's singing.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for that. All right, if you could talk a little bit about the song On Trial with the World.
Yeah. So that song, again, was one of those songs where Joe started it off, and I have here a message for him, just telling me more in detail what the lyrics are about. So he wrote here, "On Trial with the World is about having the world watching you and judging you, feeling like you always got to be at your best and doing your very best at all times." So it's like living under a microscope almost, right? Which is something that I understand. One thing about Joe's lyrics is he's very critical of that, and in a good way. He doesn't like it when people feel undermined and stuff like that in general. So he kind of writes that in his lyrics,
Mhm.
uh, and I'm not sure where that came from. I mean, whether it's maybe he has a boss at work that's heavy-handed or who knows what, but these topics come from somewhere, whether it's personal, whether it's from the news or somewhere. And he likes writing about real world stuff. That's one thing that I've always said. Me and Joe like to write about things that are real and happening. We love bands like Kiss as well, but we can't see ourselves writing songs about going out on a Saturday night and picking up girls. That's just not our kind of lyric writing style, right? So that's just kind of how we are. And musically, I think that song is fantastic. I mean, it has some really great orchestrated parts in there. And I mean, again, that's one of those songs where I want to be really careful that I showcase some of those things, but
Mhm.
not make it so showcased that it stomps over a guitar or his bass playing.
Right, that makes sense. If I could skip to the song You're Dead Sea, and
Yes.
you could talk specifically too about your approach on guitar, because Jesus, that's amazing.
Yeah, well, that song is definitely one of the more heavier songs on the record. And right away when we were done it, me and Joe both knew that was going to be the way to open the record. We wanted something hard hitting, something to come out to make sort of a statement. And of course, right away at the beginning has that really neat sequence part that Joe wrote, that do 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 do, and
Yeah.
it's very cool, very arpish, very modern sounding. And then again, I have the lyrics here written by him. He wrote here, says, "Your Dead Sea is about being negative and hateful, but trying to be positive and loving, and how life can feel heavy, like you're drowning sometimes," right? So again, there you can see he has this very uh, different approach in writing than I do, where he's very much likes to talk about the difficult stuff as well as the good stuff, right? Whereas
Mhm.
with me, I try to always find sort of the light at the end of the tunnel, whereas he'll stomp you over the head first with the bad stuff, and then he'll bring the light into it, right? So, and I'm cool with that because everybody has their way of writing songs. I mean, you being a big Yes fan like I am, if John Anderson started writing about again something totally different than what he's used to writing, we would be scratching our heads. So we'd
Right.
rather have them write what they're comfortable with, right?
Yeah, and I agree. And I mean, with the Dark Monarchy, I'm used to heavy music, intricate guitars, orchestration in terms of the keyboards, pounding bass drum, but I'm also looking forward to the interesting, intricate, and slightly dark lyrics. I mean, that's part of why I want to hear, and I think this album has all of that. It's fantastic, Mark. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so next on my list, we talked about Solitaire, Your Dead Sea, On Trial with the World. I think we covered that. The Changes We Make.
Yes. This song was started by me. Lyrically and vocally, I did all of it. And this was the song that we were kind of thinking about when we were talking about what to put out first. It was either Solitaire or this one. Joe really liked this one as well. So we had a little bit of a hard time about which one to do, but in the end, we thought Solitaire was slightly more representative. This song, I really like it because I like those clean guitar verses that are in there, and it kind of brings it down. And then when it comes back into the pre-chorus, for example, I like the sort of start-stop guitar and drum part. Dun, 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 how it kind of goes in there, and it leaves room for the vocals in there, which is something that I think is important. And funny
Mhm.
enough, I remember hearing Roger Waters say about that. He goes, sometimes it's nice to leave space in music for vocals so it doesn't get trampled and you can hear the message clear, which I think is a fantastic idea,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And lyrically, the lyrical message in this, I think, is pretty simple. It just talks about life and how life changes with by the choices that we make and by the people that we meet along the way. Sometimes meeting a person in your life can radically change your life in a good way or sometimes in a bad way. But always these changes are needed. And I think for life to be interesting, you have to be willing to explore changes in your life.
Yeah, excellent, Mark. Thank you for that. And then we did not cover the song 2 Months to Live. And I wrote a note to myself about Joe's amazing orchestration and keyboards on that.
Yes, he did a really great job with that, and this is one of those ones where I was so grateful for him for doing that because this again was one of the songs that I started writing. He completed it, and I knew that when he was going to bring me back his parts, that it was going to be strong because the message in the song is a pretty serious one. I'll get to that in a minute, but I thought that the orchestration really complemented the music, and it gives you such great ear candy. Like one of the things we're always conscious of when we write these songs is that when we get out of the singing, now we're going to be doing something different, whether it's a guitar solo or a bridge section. So we don't want to lose the listener. So how do we keep their attention? We do a guitar solo, or his orchestration parts have to be that interesting enough that it keeps your attention. And I think he does a really good job with that. Like a lot of the parts that he can throw in a violin section part that suddenly jumps out and you're like, wow, where did that come from all of a sudden, Or you can do it, I can do a guitar solo that could complement that as well with it. So it's very important that is put in there like that. Now, lyrically with this song, I remember reading a story. I believe it was in a newspaper somewhere here about a gentleman who was given a critical diagnosis. Okay, and he found it difficult to tell his loved ones that he was dying, right?
Mhm.
And the song is kind of talking about that, how he almost didn't want to tell them so that they could have a more enjoyable time together while he was still alive, rather than them dwelling on it and focusing on that. That's why in the lyrics, if you read them, there is mention in there that he almost didn't want to mention it because he just wanted to have a happy life with the person throughout the remaining time,
Mhm.
right? So I think it might be looked at as a little dark, but I think it's also a message of love because this person cared about the other person so much that he'd rather keep it a secret and have this person believe that everything is good and let's go through on with our life. And then when it comes time when he can no longer hide it from her, then he kind of tells her, because look at, if you would have told her like 2 3 months before, all that time would have been spent focusing on that rather than enjoying their life.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark, that's really deep. The music is, well, again, fantastic. It's strong. The parts are all strong. The vocals that you and Joe do are great. I love the guitar sounds. I love Joe's orchestration. Um, and of course, like I mentioned, you both produced and engineered it. And um, I'm looking forward to getting the CD. I mentioned at the beginning of this that the album will be released on July 1st, and it will be on digital and CD. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. We're going to have both digital and CD versions of it coming out. One thing that we did talk about, though, Preston, and I'm not sure if you caught that in my one of the latest updates that I did, is that we're really trying to pull to do a vinyl of this version of this album. Now, of course, this is all pending on how good it goes as far as CDs, because if there's a good response with the CDs and people purchase it, then obviously we'll know there's an audience out there that might be willing to buy vinyl. Because I noticed with Project Gemini,
Mhm.
I usually have, let's say, let's just put a number, let's say 70 CDs sold. Okay. Now, if I sold 70 CDs, I would think to myself, okay, usually my vinyl is about more than the double of what I do on CD.
Wow.
So I know that for sure I could get rid of, let's say, 100 vinyl, which is a minimal run of records that you can put, right? So the magic number, I kind of look at it as like 50. If 50 CDs can get sold, there is no reason why we can't press a vinyl. Because I find that right now, in the environment that we're in right now, there's a lot of people buying vinyl, a lot. And I'm surprised at that also because of the fact that sometimes the prices of these vinyl, even when you go on Bandcamp and stuff, they're really expensive sometimes. Sometimes people are charging $40 a record plus shipping, and that's going to be pretty costly. But people love the vinyl medium, and that's also why I feel, and that from my Project Gemini stuff, that if I buy a vinyl, the keep vinyl are $30 Canadian, and I always include posters and all kinds of other things to make you feel like you're not just dropping $30 for just a record. You're getting a lot more than just a record with it, and that will also be apparent in the Dark Monarchy release as well if we do the vinyl end of it.
Yeah, Mark, you hit it on the head. I mean, one of the things I love about Project Gemini is that when you buy the CD, you get the booklet
Yeah.
with the lyrics. And when you buy the vinyl, which is colored vinyl and brilliant, beautiful colored vinyl, then you also get that magnificent poster in every Project Gemini release. So I'm really hoping that we get a vinyl copy of this as well, because the artwork, and I think Joe did the artwork for the last album, and he's doing it for this album as well.
Uh, for this album, he didn't do the album cover for this one. Our friend Steve did it, and
Okay.
he's also been the one who's done all the Dark Monarchy ones as well. He's been our main art guy. Joe sometimes does his own artwork for his own project. Like the last album he did do his own artwork at that time, mainly because Steve Holland, the guy who does our stuff, he's now also in a band now, surprisingly, and he's a frontman of a band in England, and they're doing very well. So he's doing a lot of gigs now and stuff like that. So his time is being eaten up a little bit more than normally. But he did say that he's going to be doing all the artwork for the Dark Monarchy stuff. He really wants to continue in doing that. So we will continue to have his fantastic artwork for the Dark Monarchy records.
Fantastic, because the work is absolutely fantastic for the Dark Monarchy. And as I mentioned, the first single is out. You can get that on Bandcamp, and the album will be out July 1st, which it can be ordered via Bandcamp as well soon, I would guess, right, Mark?
Yeah, I'll be making an announcement sooner than later about how you can pre-order and stuff like that. And again, the album will come out July 1st, which is Canada Day. So again, a kind of tip of the hat to the whole monarchy thing, because after all, Canada is part of the monarchy, right, with England. So we have to kind of get that little connection in there, right? So I figured Canada Day is a great day to put out a record. It gives us still time to prepare. It's not like it's next week or something like that. So we have time to do it, and I think it'll be better too to let the people prepare if they're willing to go out and purchase the album.
Yeah, I think if you've had any Dark Monarchy albums, you want to have this. If you don't have a Dark Monarchy album, this is something you need to listen to and grab. I would encourage people to buy the CD because I like having the artwork. That's just my thing. I love the artwork.
Yeah.
And if I get a vinyl copy, even better. So I'm hoping for vinyl, Mark. Is there anything else you want to add?
Well, I want to say first of all, thank you to you. You've been always so supportive of the Dark Monarchy stuff and as well the Project Gemini or anything I've been involved with. So I got to thank you because these kind of podcasts are absolutely essential for people like me and for musicians in general. I mean, I've seen some of your other fantastic interviews you've done, and you've done brilliant work. So I hope you continue down this path of your brilliant videos and interviews that you do. And thank you to everybody who's been involved with supporting Project Gemini and the Dark Monarchy. And again, July 1st is coming up. Show your support for independent music, and we hope you enjoy the music.
Well, Mark, great stuff again. It's good talking to you as always. Appreciate your support, and we'll talk soon. And I'm going to turn off the tape recorder now.